First of all, if you're taking the LSAT as a non-native English speaker, I want to applaud you because the LSAT's hard enough as it is for those of us who grew up speaking English. So if you're looking to study for the LSAT and go to a law school in an English-speaking environment and it's not your native language, it's extra hard. And you're taking on a big challenge, and I want to congratulate you for stepping up to that challenge. You can do this. I have worked with a lot of non-native English speakers who ended up scoring in the 170s or even just the high 160s. It is achievable. It is doable. And I want to talk a bit about how that happens. The average 170 scorer, whether they're a non-native speaker or not, tends to get around 10 questions wrong, maybe more, maybe less, but that's the average. Here's what the breakdown looks like. Those students are getting perfect, maybe -1 on logic games. Then they're losing 3 points on reasoning, 3 points on the other logical reasoning, and 3 on reading comp. And so you're losing 3, 3, 3, -1 or 0. That's how you end up with a 170. So perfection on games, you see then, is much more doable than perfection on reading comp and logical reasoning. I'm not saying it's impossible to score perfectly on reasoning or reading comp, but it is really tough. Games are mathematical. They are precise. They don't have all of the same ambiguities of language that logical reasoning and reading comprehension have. And so if you're a non-native speaker or if vocabulary is just a tough thing for you, that's fine. There are workarounds. And that's what I go over in many of my reading comprehension videos. What I want to touch on in this video, however, is a couple of the major things to focus on for each section. So games, you want perfection, maybe -1. How do you get there? You do tons of games, of course, and you redo them, and you review them in detail. You review explanations, you look at breakdowns, but when it comes to the vocabulary specifically, you want to really be on the lookout for indicator words and little tricks they use, like putting a sufficient condition indicator in the middle of a rule, or going back to the famous CD's game, Prep Test 31 Game 2, most of the rules are conditional, but one of them is really two rules side by side, separated by a semicolon. And I think it's something like used pop is in, semicolon, new opera is out. But it's not a conditional, although if you're working quickly, it might appear to be so. And so spotting those sorts of tricks will help you avoid making careless errors that could lead you to lose points on games when you really do need perfection for a top score. When it comes to logical reasoning, one thing I would really encourage you to focus on is techniques for chopping out the filler, finding what is core to the argument, what is the evidence, what is the conclusion, and what is unnecessary detail that could just serve to throw you off. Maybe it's a tough vocabulary word, or maybe it's the definition of a term that you don't really need, or maybe you want to use the definition of the term instead of the term itself because it's easier to use. I went over this in one of my other reading comp videos I'll link to below. But then for the reading comprehension section specifically, what I want you to focus on is walking away with the main idea. The details you can always go back to when you need them, but just reading the passage, extracting the main idea, and then finding ways to summarize and oversimplify the passage itself in order to make it easier to understand. I will often caricature the viewpoints in an argument in order to dumb it down for myself, just as a reference point. But I really want you to focus on, again, perfection of games and techniques to simplify the other sections for yourself.